political landscape of Europe in 2025 has taken a dramatic turn that few could have predicted just a few years ago. We're witnessing an unprecedented surge in far-right movements across the continent, with particularly striking developments in Austria, Germany, and Hungary. These shifts aren't just local phenomena. They represent a fundamental challenge to the European democratic order that has prevailed since World War II. The rising tide of right-wing populism has manifested in electoral victories, growing street movements, and increasingly mainstream acceptance of previously fringe ideologies. In Austria, Germany, and Hungary, we're seeing not just political parties gaining ground, but entire societies grappling with dramatic ideological transformations that could reshape the future of the European Union and beyond. Austria's political transformation over the past year has been nothing short of remarkable. The Freedom Party's unprecedented surge in recent regional elections, securing over 35% of the vote in 3 key provinces, has sent shockwaves through the country's traditional political establishment. This dramatic shift has been fueled by growing public discontent over immigration policies and economic uncertainties, particularly in the wake of continued energy price instability. What makes this transformation particularly significant is how the Freedom Party has successfully rebranded itself. While maintaining its nationalist core, it has adopted a more sophisticated approach to public communication, effectively combining anti-immigration rhetoric with economic populism. Their promise of an Austria-first economic policy has resonated strongly with middle-class voters who previously supported centrist parties. The impact on domestic policy has been immediate and far-reaching. The coalition government has implemented stringent border controls, significantly reduced asylum acceptances, and introduced controversial integration contracts for existing immigrants. These measures have strained Austria's relationships with several EU partners, particularly regarding the Schengen Agreement and EU-wide immigration policies. Perhaps most concerning is the ripple effect on Austria's institutional framework. The judiciary's independence has faced unprecedented challenges, with new legislation giving the government greater control over judicial appointments. Media freedom has also come under pressure, with state-funded outlets experiencing leadership changes that critics argue favour the new political direction. On the European stage, Austria has increasingly aligned itself with Hungary and Poland in challenging EU consensus on various issues, from immigration to rule of law standards. The country's traditional role as a bridge between Eastern and Western Europe has shifted to becoming a vocal advocate for what it calls sovereign European nations, effectively challenging the EU's federalist ambitions. Germany's far-right landscape has undergone a dramatic transformation, with the Alternative for Germany party now consistently polling above 20% nationally, a figure that would have seemed unthinkable just a few years ago. This surge has been particularly pronounced in eastern states, where support has reached unprecedented levels of over 30% in Saxony and Thuringia. The party's success can be attributed to several factors, including their effective exploitation of economic anxieties, particularly around inflation and energy costs. They've successfully linked these concerns to Germany's support for Ukraine and environmental policies, arguing that traditional German interests have been sacrificed for international commitments. Their message of economic nationalism has found fertile ground among both working-class voters and the increasingly anxious middle class. What's particularly striking is the party's ability to breach traditional political barriers. Recent polls show they're no longer just attracting protest voters, but are building a stable base across different demographic groups. Their rhetoric has become more sophisticated, moving beyond simple anti-immigration messaging to present themselves as defenders of German prosperity and social security. The traditional centre-right parties have struggled to respond effectively. Attempts to adopt harder-line positions on immigration have often backfired, being seen as inauthentic by voters while alienating moderate supporters. This has created a political vacuum that the far right has skillfully exploited. The CDU-CSU's traditional role as the primary conservative force in German politics is now seriously challenged for the first time in post-war history. Social media analytics reveal a concerning trend in public discourse, with far-right talking points increasingly entering mainstream discussions. Terms like remigration and national preference have moved from the fringes to regular political debate. This shift in acceptable political discourse represents perhaps the most significant change in German political culture since reunification. Hungary has emerged as a defining model for right-wing governance in Europe, with Prime Minister Viktor Orban's leadership continuing to inspire similar movements across the continent. After nearly 15 years in power, his Fidesz party has transformed Hungary into what they call an illiberal democracy, effectively creating a template that many far-right parties in neighbouring countries seek to emulate. The Hungarian system's key feature has been its ability to maintain democratic appearances while systematically dismantling democratic institutions. Through carefully crafted media laws, constitutional changes, and electoral reforms, the government has created a structure that makes opposition victory practically impossible. This approach has proven particularly attractive to right-wing movements in Poland, Slovakia, and even Austria, who view it as a more sophisticated alternative to traditional authoritarian methods. The Hungarian government's messaging strategy has been remarkably effective, combining traditional conservative values with modern communication techniques. They've successfully framed their policies as a defense of Christian European civilization against what they describe as the threats of immigration, globalization, and liberal cultural influences. This narrative has resonated far beyond Hungary's borders, with right-wing parties across Europe increasingly adopting similar rhetoric. Economic policies have also played a crucial role in maintaining popular support. The government's approach of combining nationalist economic policies with selective free market elements has created a unique hybrid system. State control over strategic sectors coexists with benefits for foreign investors, particularly those aligned with the government's political objectives. This economic model has attracted attention from right-wing parties across Europe, who see it as a viable alternative to both pure market economics and traditional state control. The impact of Hungary's influence can be seen in the increasing coordination between right-wing parties across Central and Eastern Europe. Regular summits, shared campaign strategies, and mutual support networks have created what some analysts call a Budapest-centered right-wing internationale. This network has become increasingly effective at coordinating responses to EU policies and sharing successful political strategies. Looking across these far-right movements in Austria, Germany, and Hungary, several striking patterns emerge that reveal a sophisticated and coordinated approach to gaining and maintaining political power. These movements share remarkably similar playbooks, despite operating in different national contexts. A central common thread is their masterful use of social media and alternative news platforms to bypass traditional media channels. They've developed what political analysts call a parallel information ecosystem, where they can control their narrative without traditional media scrutiny. These platforms are used to amplify anti-immigration messages, promote nationalist ideologies, and challenge what they term as establishment narratives. Their economic messaging shows notable similarities as well. All three movements have moved away from traditional right-wing free market positions, instead embracing a form of economic nationalism. They promise to protect domestic workers and industries while maintaining a skeptical stance toward globalization and international trade agreements. This social nationalism approach has proven particularly effective in attracting former left-wing voters who feel abandoned by traditional socialist parties. Immigration remains their most powerful rallying point, with all three movements employing nearly identical rhetoric about protecting national identity and cultural heritage. They consistently frame immigration as both a security threat and a cultural challenge, linking it to crime rates and what they describe as the erosion of traditional values. This messaging has proven especially effective in regions experiencing economic uncertainty. Their approach to the European Union demonstrates another shared characteristic. Rather than calling for immediate withdrawal, they advocate for what they term Europe of nations, pushing for a dramatic reduction in EU powers while maintaining economic benefits. This more nuanced position allows them to appeal to both Eurosceptic voters and those who fear the economic consequences of leaving the EU entirely. Perhaps most significantly, these movements share a sophisticated approach to institutional change. They've learned to work within democratic systems while gradually altering them from within. They focus on gaining control of key institutions, particularly in the justice system and media sector, while maintaining a facade of democratic legitimacy. This strategy has proven far more effective than previous far-right movements' more confrontational approaches. The convergence of these far-right movements in Central Europe presents profound implications for the future of European democracy and stability. The ripple effects are already visible in the weakening of democratic institutions and the erosion of press freedoms, setting concerning precedents that could spread beyond these three nations. For the European Union, this poses an existential challenge unlike any since its founding. The coordinated efforts of these countries to reshape EU governance from within threatens to paralyze decision-making processes, particularly on crucial issues like climate policy, migration management, and economic integration. The potential formation of a powerful right-wing bloc within EU institutions could fundamentally alter the Union's character and capabilities. Looking ahead, the next 18 to 24 months will likely prove decisive. If these movements continue to gain momentum, we could see a dramatic restructuring of European power dynamics. The traditionally strong Franco-German alliance that has steered EU policy may give way to a new power center in Central Europe, one that promotes a fundamentally different vision of European cooperation and identity. This shift carries global implications as well. A more nationalist, inward-looking Europe would create a power vacuum in international affairs, potentially emboldening authoritarian actors worldwide. The success of these movements is already inspiring similar political forces across the globe, from South America to Asia, suggesting we may be witnessing not just a European phenomenon, but the emergence of a new model of governance that challenges liberal democracy's core principles.